Let me tell you a story about my investment strategy.
You're really good at this because you started as a small little mom and pop rental agency, essentially, and now you have a lot of rentals.
Well, we took personally, I can talk personally and professionally. Obviously, we see a lot of different things and there's a lot of different ways for people to get in. Personally, one of the things that we did, and I'm not going to say I invented it. In fact, one of my mentors did something similar to it. I loved the idea, so I started to grow with it, and then I diversified from there. Was I bought my first property because I wanted to get on that real estate ladder. But then what I wanted to do is I bought a property knowing that that was going to be a property that I was going to live in for a bit, have some of the advantages of ownership, but my longer term plan with that property was for that to become a rental property when I bought my next property. So I was going to keep it and buy more from that perspective. Now, the interesting thing on that is when you're looking for something to buy that you know isn't a long-term home and you're really trying to put more emphasis on what it will be as a rental property versus what it will be for you.
So your very first property you bought, what was the number one thing that you were looking for outside of like you're able to rent it because there's restrictions out there?
I think twofold. As you said, I needed to make sure that it was something that I could rent because I was on a very limited budget. It was going to be in some level of an association, so I needed to make sure it was. I worked for a looser association. It's actually, I bought a townhouse down in Pilsen almost 20 years ago now. But it was
So you bought something in an up-and-coming neighborhood. Okay.
So we moved from a really established neighborhood to something that was a little bit more challenged at the time. Obviously, it's a fantastic neighborhood now, but we pioneered a bit. We went into a neighborhood that a lot of people weren't. We bought a townhouse that had a looser association so that we knew that the rentals were okay. And then we just made sure that it had things that would be appealing to renters in a longer term. We wanted proximity to transportation, proximity to stuff. There wasn't a lot of stuff in the neighborhood at that time, but where we could see it coming in on the main drags. We wanted overall rentability. We wanted in-unit laundry. We wanted lower assessments because once again, that worked into our numbers and in terms of how we looked at it. We wanted parking and we wanted functionality of space. Now, I won't tell you it was a property that inspired me by any means. It wasn't something that really spoke to me in the sense that I absolutely wanted to live there. It was my dream home. But it was a part of my dream home because it was a part of my investment plan. So we lived there for 2 years, loved living there, fantastic neighbors, enjoyed everything about it. But then when the time was come, we moved to our next house kind of under that same idea. And then we started to grow from there. Now our next house was a little bit different in the sense that we thought we were going to buy an old Victorian, renovate it and move on. Well, our investment strategy went a little awry with that one because once we renovated it, we loved it and we never moved. So that was an investment in ourselves.
So did you buy in like a smaller neighborhood so that you could get an entry point, or was it for you knew like it was going to blow up and so you were looking at it from an appreciation standpoint over the 20 years?
So the original one in Pilsen, right? We knew that it was going to be a long-term hold. And what we saw that Pilsen was a neighborhood that I had a lot of belief in that it would do very, very well, mostly because of proximity to downtown and to the city. If you look
close,
I always say if you look opposite, you're pretty much at the heart of Lincoln Park if you take the north side versus the south side. So the location was a big thing for us back then.
Oh, I gotcha.
Even when we moved to our next house, the one that we were supposed to renovate and leave, which we never left, at that point in time, we went just off the fringe of a neighborhood where we thought we could get some good return on neighborhood investment rather than buying in the heart of the most popular location from that perspective. Now, we've navigated a lot of different ways since then. One of our newer things that we're doing, newer being in the last 6 or 7 years, is Airbnb. Now you're gonna stop and say, wait a minute, Amanda, you told me.
But also your investment strategy lately has also been in other markets that you actually travel to as well. So it goes. It's almost kind of like a multifaceted thing for you guys, which is really
so that was where we shifted, is that knowing that Airbnb is very, very difficult in the city. We've talked about it ad nauseum over the last year. It's very difficult in the city. So we took that strategy and we put it into our own personal lifestyle. We have family in different locations. We like to travel certain places on a regular basis. So what we did was we bought properties there, which were more Airbnb friendly, so that we could use them to visit family and do what we like to do. but then also had those investments perform well for us in other pieces. And that's the one thing that I always tell people when people come to us and say, hey, I love the idea of Airbnb. Well, there is an avenue to do it in other places, but we have to make sure that just like in Chicago, you're doing it in places that you fully understand the local ordinances around it. Yeah. Because we did get caught. We got caught with our most recent purchase, which is our farm. We have a farm 2 hours from here. And where we got caught was we weren't as well aware of some of the ordinances on it.
Oh, really?
In the sense of, not the ordinances. We knew we could do it.
Yeah.
We didn't know the small town was going to be so tough with regards to inspecting the property and making us do so many renovations to the property to get our licensing.
Oh, interesting.
So,
okay. Well,
you live and learn.
Hey, yeah. Well, now you also have like the renovations in the property. Hopefully that means that you put the sweat equity in it. It raises the
value. A lot of sweat equity.
There's a ton of things.
Absolutely.
There's pros and cons around it.
So what do you feel, talking about investment strategies, we have a lot of clients that want to do something in Chicago, more limited budget. Where do you think one of the best entry level investments is?
Well, it's coming out this month. So by the time this podcast airs, but I also think multi-units right now, it's hard because multi-units right now are not cash flowing as well because interest rates are higher, but it's a longer term investment that you're thinking about. It's money that you're going to put up front on a monthly basis. You're probably covering some of that extra cost, but then when interest rates come down, you refinance, it'll be, rents will come up a little bit more.
So from a multi-unit investment, and we're talking 2 to 4 units.
2 to 4 units.
Are those ones that you're saying clients are living in them and renting out the other units?
Yes.
Okay. So an owner-occupied multi-unit.
Yeah, it's an owner-occupied unit. And the nice thing is, again, talking about what's coming out in November, Fannie and Freddie Mac just changed their guidelines to go from a 15% down payment requirement down to 5%.
Huge.
Which is huge.
Huge.
But again, with interest rates, it is causing the payments to be a little bit higher because you're not putting as much money down. So it is just one of those things that you have to understand. You're still having somebody pay for your mortgage.
Parts of it.
Part of it.
Yes.
To cover some of that, but also understand it may be a longer term investment.
For sure.
And then you can hopefully live in it for 2 years or 4 years or however long, and then you flip it to the next one.
For sure. So, I'd say the other thing that we see a lot, one of the things that I think is the safest entry levels are smaller condos, right? Somebody doesn't have the budget for a multi-unit. They can get expensive. I say dirt is expensive, but entry level, a $200,000 condo, they want to kind of get in there. Now, the things on that, they're typically not going to cash flow.
Yeah.
People don't buy those under the idea that they're going to be making money. In fact, some of them even, especially with interest rates, will lose money from month to month. But those are typically things that's entry level. You've got management in place. It's a relatively safe investment. It's easier. And those are usually long-term plays, right?
Well, and also your items that are in your unit actually don't break down. There's less things to
go wrong.
So it is sometimes really nice to buy just a condo really quickly, make that your first establishment, and then move on and grow and get a little bit bigger the next time around and go from there.
Well, and those are things that you're letting somebody else pay your equity down.
Totally.
Your money's coming that way. You're not going to make a ton month over month. In fact, you might not make any, but you're going to, at the end of the day, you're going to have more equity the longer you hold it, and that you can transition into something that's a little bit more profitable. Just like real estate, investment real estate, it's a ladder as well. You need to start somewhere. You need to get your feet wet. You need to start moving on and kind of growing in that based on what your comfortability is. Because we say it all the time, an investment property with a great tenant is fantastic. An investment property with a terrible tenant is awful.
Yes.
So anyways, a lot of great ideas in there.